And as we can see from a trauma event, I'll talk more about that in another video, we develop a memory which is very, very different to the memories. It's an unprocessed memory, and actually we develop beliefs about what happens. This goes on to inform that hypervigilance, that anger, that fear, that threat in the here and now, which we have to cope with, an aspect of which will be avoidance. And the means by which we cope with it unfortunately tend to reinforce the memory and the meaning involved, or the belief involved, I should say. So let's talk about belief. It's also perhaps helpful to say this is where we can know or experience things on two levels which reflect those two parts of the brain, the cortex and the animal brain. I remember reading a newspaper article once about a woman who'd been really seriously sexually assaulted, and she reported feelings of disbelief and horror that she became frightened of her brother and father, two people with whom she'd had really, really good relationships. Now what was happening here was that something about the nature of the trauma meant that she was being reminded of the man who attacked her against those two loving figures. Her cortex, the mature human brain, knew that her brother and father were perfectly nice, reasonable people. Her animal brain was activating to the reminder, and that unprocessed memory, that memory without a time tag, was coming back and interfering with her conceptions in the there and now. So that's how we can know or experience things on two different levels which feel like a contradiction in trauma. Belief is the meaning we attribute to what's happened or ourselves or other people in the trauma and beyond it. It's the sense we make, how we interpret the trauma itself, ourselves within it, the world afterwards, and potentially our future. I've mentioned one particular belief about the symptoms of trauma already. Am I going mad? That's the meaning we ascribe to what's happening for us, and is one particular example. Other examples regard worthlessness. I feel worthless that this has happened. I feel weak. I couldn't protect myself. I was out of control. Might be about other people. Other people are threatening. Other people have bad intentions. That might inform our sense of the world. The world is an unsafe place. The world is a hostile place. These are all examples of some of the typical interpretations, appraisals, thoughts which come about from trauma, the kind of meaning we ascribe to ourselves and what's happened. Now, having generated these beliefs, we're in a situation where we're likely to be affected by them. If I believe I am worthless that this trauma has happened, that's an appraisal that may lend itself to sadness, feelings of loss, feelings of grief. If I believe that other people are untrustworthy or have bad intentions about me, then this might lend itself to feelings of anxiety about what's happened. I might also feel very angry that a trauma has befallen me. And all of these things lend themselves to this next bit, this sense of threat. This sense of threat is also going to be added to by the fact that we have unprocessed memories, which are going to be offering flashbacks, intrusive memories, nightmares and sleep disturbance. So where we're at right now with that anxiety and that fear and that anger is a really difficult place to be at. And so invariably we cope somehow, and at some level this usually involves a degree of avoidance. Some of this cannot be helped, some of this isn't conscious. We can no more control waking up from a trauma nightmare than we can control digesting a sandwich if we were to swallow it. There are many different ways of coping, almost as infinite as we are people. But some of the major ones might involve withdrawal, so actually protecting ourselves within our houses or around our friends and family. Drugs and alcohol may feature, self-harm might feature, becoming aggressive might feature, and I seem to notice that with people who are combat trained or experienced in being able to handle themselves physically. And this might not feel like a form of avoidance. However, in a kind of a way, it's almost like those people are protecting themselves and avoiding the idea that the world might be safer than they assume it is. Often, avoidance also involves reminders themselves. So, we would steer clear of people who might remind us of perpetrators in the situation, or remind ourselves of particularly significant witnesses. Especially, we might avoid where it happened, or sites and circumstances which remind us of where it happened. We may furthermore go on to avoid thoughts or feelings that remind us of the ones that we encountered in the trauma.